I have never played a God of War game until I made this video. I know the franchise by reputation alone, and that reputation is the stylish hack and slash combat against hordes of enemies and huge bosses. It's because of that I had no idea that Kratos is forced to learn magic throughout the game. In fact, using magic is actually mandatory to progress the game. Or is it? Can you beat God of War not only without magic, but without ever even learning any magic? Let's find out. Here are the rules. But first I just gotta say that after seeing some strange things that can happen in this game, it really makes me wonder how it's all held together behind the scenes, which is why it's perfect that the sponsor for this video, boot.dev, could help explain exactly that. If you don't know, boot.dev is an online learning tool for back-end developers, and I wish I knew about them years ago. I used to work alongside developers myself, and trying to learn from them was tiresome, which is a shame because I knew exactly how fun coding could be. Well, boot.dev knows this all too well. They've made sure that learning code is never boring, as their courses feel like a rewarding role-playing game. So while you're learning back-end web development in Python and Go programming languages, you also get a nice sense of accomplishment as you earn experience points, level up, unlock achievements, and even boost your ranking on a global leaderboard. Plus, your newfound coding knowledge in game development might help you understand how things like this can happen in your favourite video games. It's designed to get you stuck into writing your own code and finishing projects as you go. Also, boot.dev knows that times are tough. Not everyone wants to commit to a membership right away. That's why all boot.dev content is free to read and watch in guest mode, and paid memberships unlock AI assistance and all the RPG aspects. Speaking of tough times, how's this for a deal? If you click the link in our description and use our code NG+, or scan the QR code on screen, you will get 25% off your first month, or 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. That's a saving of £153. So take advantage of that deal with my link in the description or the QR code and use our code NG+. And maybe you can learn why things like this keep happening to poor Kratos. Back to the rules. Rule number 1, we must avoid learning any magic at all. Rule number 2, glitches are fine, just no hacking. And rule number 3, once we defeat the final boss, Ares, we win! Once a new magic is obtained, it displays in our inventory menu in place of the question marks. Normally, obtaining and using these magics is mandatory to progress the game, so we need to find a way to skip all of them. This means that by the end of the game, the idea is to have no magic in our inventory menu at all. The only other thing to mention is that I am playing the PS2 version of the game, but I think most of what you're about to see works on the PS3 version as well. The game starts out on the Agean Sea? I'm gonna get pronunciations wrong, I'm sorry. Where we first learn the ropes of combat. If we're not using magic at any point, we better get pretty good at using the only weapon that we get by default, the Blades of Chaos. We also want to collect as many red orbs as we possibly can to get upgrades for our Blades of Chaos, since of course this is the only weapon we will be using. Early on, there is also an opportunity to learn some advanced movement techniques that speedrunners all use. We're supposed to move this crate to use as a platform, all while being shot by archers. However, it's possible to skip ever needing the crate with a method of gaining more height than intended. Kratos can perform a standard double jump. Also, if we uppercut with the Blades of Chaos, Kratos can follow it up with a high jump, which is about as high as a normal double jump. However, if we perform that high jump after the uppercut and then slash once in midair, Kratos can actually get in the double jump in midair after the slash. The timing is quite tricky, since if you press the button during the animation at the wrong time, it doesn't work. But if done right, this can result in slightly more height than the game ever intended. And we can grab on the edge and skip this section without ever touching the crate. Directly following that, we see a locked door. To open the door, we're supposed to acquire the game's first magic, Zeus's Fury. To unlock Zeus's Fury, it's intended that we climb up to the mast and slide down a rope to reach another ship. Once there, we can see the magic and we acquire it by just walking up to it. From there, we need to defeat the game's first boss, the Hydra, in an epic battle. Once defeated, we go inside its mouth and get the key to unlock the door from the captain before he falls inside the Hydra's stomach. However, if we can just skip the locked door in the first place, we never need to come to the other ship at all. To do this, when we reach the locked door, we climb to the mast, but instead of sliding down the rope, we want to jump down and land on the very edge of the ship. Getting the landing is harder than it looks. We can use a double jump as we fall to help get the precise landing we need, and we also found that following the rope line down helps as well. Odd as it seems, this is the only way to stand on the edge of the ship like this. There's an invisible barrier preventing us from just jumping straight up here. Once we are here, we need to walk along the edge without falling off the edge to the right, because if we do, we will die. And if we fall to the left, we'll get pushed back in bounds and we have to climb back to the mast and do it all over again. But when we pull it off, we can then double jump around the right side of the door and clip through the wall into the corridor on the other side. The magic has been skipped. We play the quick time event minigame for some red orbs, and before we leave the ship there is a chest with mana orbs inside. This would normally replenish our mana bar, but since we skipped the first magic, we don't have a mana bar yet. So another goal of this run is to reach the end of the game without ever having a mana bar. And we arrive at the Gate of Athens. After some combat, it isn't long before the game's second magic, Medusa's Gaze, must be acquired as well. It's used to turn enemies into stone. Not only is this useful in battle, but there are sections within the same level where Medusa's Gaze is required to solve puzzles. It's standard stuff. We lure an enemy onto a pressure plate and then turn them to stone to keep the door open. So not only do we need a method of skipping acquiring Medusa's Gaze, but we also need a way to skip these puzzle sections. If only there was a solution to both of these problems. Oh wait, there is. We reload an older save to start the level over again. We're back on the ship. When we climb up the ladder, there is a short cutscene that shows a wide shot of Athens. During that cutscene, what we want to do is hold the left analog stick to the right, but slightly upwards as well, so between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. We'll know if we got it right because Kratos will grab on the edge to the right of the ladder when the cutscene's finished. Once we're here, all we need to do is pause the game and select Restart from last checkpoint. The start of this level is our last checkpoint, but it triggered right as Kratos was hanging on the edge. So restarting from that checkpoint zips Kratos downwards until he hits solid ground. And that solid ground is the bottom of the water, since the bottom of the boat has been deloaded. Since we never actually touch the water's surface, the game never triggers Kratos' swim animation. We can freely walk around down here, and not much is solid either. We walk to the left and around, through the rocks, out of bounds, until we see a dark corridor in the foreground. We walk towards the camera until we hit a wall, and we can walk around this wall slightly to the left, being careful not to clip back in bounds. We stand directly next to this pillar, face right, and hold triangle to uppercut to the water's surface. We are now floating on the surface, but we're still out of bounds since we're under the pier. We need to submerge back under the water so we can actually swim. But submerging under the water is an ability that we're supposed to unlock later in the game. However, it is possible to submerge here by jumping and attacking once in midair just before we fall back into the water. This works thanks to Kratos hitting his head on the pier, and now we can submerge under the ship, and then we want to swim directly up through the hole in the ship itself. This part of the water doesn't cancel the swim animation, and thus we have achieved swim in air. We can use this swim in air to swim through almost the entire level, but we still need to stick somewhat close to the general route to hit the necessary load triggers. We can even still open treasure chests while swimming without cancelling the swimming. We can even stay swimming after cutscenes. We did try to swim all the way to Ares, but then everything just descends into darkness. Anyway, we can just swim all the way through the rest of Athens, but a downside of the swim in air glitch is that the camera won't change perspectives as we travel. An easy fix for that is to pause and unpause the game. This fixes the camera, so we do this a lot. Another weakness we have while swimming in air is being turned to stone. If that happens to us, we fall down and die immediately, so we stay away from the enemies as best we can when we can help it. Also, we need to avoid touching any water no matter how shallow it is, as that will cancel the swim in air. I did get greedy and I clipped inside this rock to try and get some red orbs, but then we got soft locked inside since we can't attack while swimming. The end of this level would normally require us to climb to the top of a courtyard to rescue the lady hanging on for dear life before she falls to her death. We can actually just swim straight up to her to trigger the next cutscene, or we can completely ignore her and swim directly to the Athens sewers instead. Unfortunately, it's the sewers where we need to lose our swim in air. We can do this by touching the shallow water at the start. We'll see why we had to do this soon. For now, we avoid as much combat as we can, and we even find a hidden red orb chest. All these points will be spent on the Blades of Chaos, of course. We have no magic to spend them on anyway. This takes us to the start of the next level, the Desert of Lost Souls. Right away, it's intended that we scour the desert listening out for the Siren's song. When we find them, we defeat them. After we defeat all three, the entrance to the building opens up. This can take a long time since just finding the sirens can be awkward. Thankfully, there's a way to skip this entire section. To do this, we need to learn a new ability with our Blades of Chaos. There's a red orb chest in the desert, and with that we have just enough to upgrade the Blades of Chaos to level 2. This unlocks a few new moves, but the one we're interested in right now is Hermes Stomp. This move is basically a downward stomp while in mid-air. Now we need to find this exact spot in the northern part of the desert, right before we see a stone wall. All we need to do is spam Hermes Stomp against the rock wall. The best way is to hold R1 and then spam the jump button to hit quick continuous Hermes Stomps. Eventually this clips us right through the wall and directly onto the conveyor belt. To get off the conveyor belt, we're supposed to push a block to the left against the direction that the conveyor is moving, whilst being attacked by enemies. But as is becoming a running theme, we can skip this too. It's done in exactly the same way that we did back on the ship. We uppercut, attack once, and then jump again in midair before we fall, which allows us to just grab on the edge. We soon see why we needed to lose the swim in air when we did. If we were still swimming, we wouldn't have been able to blow this horn. If we can't blow this horn, the game's story simply doesn't progress. The sewer is the latest area in the game with any water in whatsoever, so there's no way to lose the swim in air any later than that. Even if we took a death, we still wouldn't have lost the swim in air. It's a very persistent glitch. The next fight against a horde of sirens is where I really noticed the difficulty of beating enemies without magic. Thankfully, if we defeat a siren with a grapple attack, they drop green orbs that heal us a bit. Otherwise, I would have struggled a lot more. The sirens can even hit each other now and then with friendly fire. At the start of the next level, Pandora's Temple, we're supposed to take a side path to the left of this big gate. From there, we climb up onto the rocks, and an NPC opens the big gate for us, although this also spawns a couple of large enemies. But there's a skip for that too, and I found it interesting, so I'm going to show it off. There is a chest to the left side of the gate. Without opening it, we need to use a Hermes Stomp to squeeze between the chest and the rock wall. As soon as we clip through the wall, we need to quickly turn around and face to the left. This prevents Kratos from being pushed back out of the wall. We now just jump on the spot to get pushed a bit further through the wall, and from here we just need to double jump through the steps and we've skipped the locked gate. This brings us to the Rings of Pandora. We soon see what looks like a new magic, and it's blocking a tunnel that we need to travel through to progress the game. Now, despite what it looks like, this isn't a magic, it's actually a new weapon called the Blade of Artemis. But this new weapon takes up a slot in our inventory, which means we will be skipping it too. To do this, we hug the right wall and press both R1 and L1 at the same time. This will make Kratos both charge and block at the same time. Doing this against certain sloped walls causes Kratos to get stuck against the wall, and then he kinda just glides along it. During this, Kratos has no hit detection, so we slide right on by the Blade of Artemis. The combat is getting pretty serious now. I really struggled with the Medusa enemies in the next area. Now we're supposed to fight our way to the top floor through a big horde of enemies, avoid some booby traps, solve some puzzles, and fight even more enemies, all in order to find 2 shield items. These shield items will then open a door for us, but we can skip all that with another very precise jump. Once again, it's an uppercut, followed by a single attack, and then another perfectly timed jump. This allows us to reach the upper part of the room earlier than intended. But now, we want to skip by the locked door. This is as simple as a well-placed double jump above the door to fall right through the wall and on the other side of the door. We make sure to open the chest behind this statue to find one of the 2 Muse keys. We've actually skipped collecting a handle crank that we need to progress. Without it, we can't release the giant stone ball to break the locked door open. But, as usual, there's a skip for that. If we stand in front of the locked door and use an uppercut, attack, jump trick, we can just grab the window ledge above the door. From here, we can double jump to the left ledge to find another red orb chest. After we open it, we can perform another jump against the wall. This jump is a bit more difficult. It takes advantage of another level 2 Blade of Chaos ability called Apollo's Offensive. This is performed by pressing pressing L1 and X in midair, Kratos will spin his blades around and then strike downwards, while also giving himself a slight boost in height. We need to perform an uppercut, an Apollo's offensive, a second jump, and then another Apollo's offensive, all in quick succession to gain even more height than was ever intended. We can't just spam the attacks as quick as possible, there's a precise timing to it, but when we get it right, we can go right through the wall and land beyond the locked door. When we return to the central part of the level, there is now a giant cylinder rolling around the room in circles. We're supposed to avoid it, but if we can get behind it, we can actually use the Hermes stomp to get on top of it. From there, we can jump straight up to the ladder, which drops the cylinder down a hole straight away. Once we climb the roof, we're forced to fight a pack of Cerberuses. Cerberi? I hate this fight. I gave it a try in a casual playthrough, and the only way I managed to win was by spamming Medusa's gaze. Even after the fight, there are more large enemies and an army of archers waiting for us. I'm really not looking forward to this section without magic, but thankfully, there's a skip for that. All we need to do is stand in the right spot, uppercut, and then use a Hermes stomp to land inside the arena. The positioning is a bit precise, but when we nail the landing, we then need to pause the game quickly and restart checkpoint. If we did all that right, we can now just walk through the area without any Cerberus spawns. The following enemies are still there. We're supposed to defeat them to remove a barrier, but if we spam Hermes Stomp against the right side of the barrier, we can just clip right through. The red orbs from the chests inside this building are enough to upgrade the Blades of Chaos to level 3, and then we find the second Muse key after a short climb. Following that, there is a cage high above that we're supposed to drop down with a lever, but we can only pull the lever by grabbing a crank up ahead first. This isn't an issue or anything, but there is an advanced speedrun technique that I thought was interesting, so I'll show it. It requires an insane string of attacks in midair, and it's all capped off with a Hermes stomp at the very top to squeeze between the cage and the wall. Just looking at this hurts my fingers, so I won't be doing this. It's just a time save anyway. Also, I died here a lot while pushing the cage up the slope, but who's really surprised? We're safe to grab the trident to learn how to submerge underwater, since it's not magic that goes in our inventory. Although, I need to mention, throughout the game we can acquire items called Phoenix Feathers. Currently, we have collected 5 of them. For every 6 that we collect, our mana bar receives an upgrade. But if we collect our 6th feather when we don't have a mana bar, this will give us a mana bar, so we must avoid all feathers from now on. Once we get back to the rings of Pandora, we can use the 2 Muse keys to find a bunch of red orbs, and now we can upgrade the Blades of Chaos to level 4, just in time for the next area. This was one of the more frustrating parts of the game for me. The game wants us to defeat a bunch of centaurs, but we're supposed to land the finishing blow while they're standing inside this spinning circle. Medusa's gaze certainly makes this a lot easier, but we can't use that. What's more, there are 2 circles, so we have to do this a total of 8 times. Following that, we need to traverse a labyrinth full of enemies and booby traps. It's confusing and annoying, so we just skip the entire section instead because we can. Back in the area with the centaurs, we can climb some steps, stand on this vase to reach an upper platform, and now all we need to do is reach the bridge directly above us. It's a bit easier said than done though. We need to uppercut slightly to the left, hit an Apollo's offensive towards the right, and then time a double jump right afterwards to grab the edge of the bridge. The centaurs and the entire labyrinth is skipped, with something as simple looking as that. Another speedrun strat is using Rage of the Gods while hanging on this rope. We learned this when the Blades of Chaos hit level 2. It buffs Kratos and prevents him from being knocked back. This means the archers can't knock us off the rope as long as we get across quickly. Now for another frustrating part of the game, the balance beams. We actually need to manually maintain our balance on these. We can easily fall off and die. If that wasn't enough, we also need to jump over the saws that rotate towards our legs. But once again, say it with me now, there's a skip for that. We can double jump our way beyond the first couple of balance beams until we reach this chest. We can stand on this chest for a bit of extra height. Now we need to uppercut, Apollo's offensive, double jump, and then one more Apollo's offensive. This gives us just enough height to reach the rope above us, which skips a whole bunch of balance beams, although it is possible to miss a load trigger if we don't grab the rope far back enough, which means we end up falling into the void. This brings us to the boss fight against the Minotaur. The intended way to fight this boss is after we've dealt enough damage, it gets stunned, and then we hit some quick time events on it. And finally, we pull the lever on the left of the top floor to fire a giant arrow at it. We then repeat this a few times to defeat it, but there's a quicker way that the speedrunners use. After hitting it with the first giant arrow, we can actually hold R2 to start pulling the lever again before the animation of the previous arrow finishes, which basically means we can stun lock him. It's directly after this boss that the game intends for us to acquire the next magic, Army of Hades. As we can see, the magic is blocking the entry of a narrow corridor that we need to travel through. The God of War speedrun community has discovered a couple of variations of skipping this magic, and here's the one I managed to pull off. We go to the other side of the giant door that the Minotaur boss was standing in front of, and we stand in this corner. There is a specific jump that we need to perform on this spot, but we need as much height as we can possibly get. The jumps we've been doing so far are not good enough, and we also need the Blades of Chaos to be level 4 for this. Before we detail the jump, there's something I need to mention. The advanced movement in this game takes advantage of momentum. If we're able to interrupt certain animations with the right timing, Kratos' momentum from that animation will be stored. This momentum can then be added to our next action. If we perform an Apollo's offensive in midair, but then Kratos lands on the ground before the attack animation finishes, this stores a bit of the upward momentum. We can carry this momentum into the jump we're about to do for a bit of extra height. We do a small jump and then press L1 triangle immediately to perform an attack called Falling Helios. Kratos spins multiple times and slams into the ground at the end, but during the spin he gains height. At the apex of this height, we use an Apollo's offensive and then a double jump to just grab the edge of what looks like nothing. This is actually the top of the collision since the developers didn't make the entire door solid. Now we need to jump to the right and land inside the lava in the other room, which doesn't hurt us thankfully. We soon run out of solid floor behind this wall if we walk down too far, so we actually need to seam walk along the very edge of the inbounds ground. We slowly and carefully make our way along until we're close enough to just jump inside the corridor below. This works since these walls aren't solid from the outside, and this bypasses the Army of Hades magic. There are a few more enemies we're supposed to fight next. We tried to skip them with a high jump over the barrier, but in doing so, we accidentally knocked the enemy over the edge for an instant kill. This brings us to the Cliffs of Madness, a level full of platforming along and up a cliff full of enemies. Maybe too many enemies for my liking, but there are a few shortcuts we can take. For example, the very first cliff edge we see can be jumped across. We just hang over the edge, jump towards the other side, and perform an Apollo's offensive, another jump, another Apollo's offensive, and top it all off with a Hermes stomp. Soon we see that we need to find 2 necklaces around the cliff, and bring them back here to activate a bridge. The necklaces aren't that hard to find, but finding them does require us to solve a couple of puzzles first, which can be a bit slow, so it's a good thing there's a skip for that. The only issue is my lack of skill. The jump required to reach the top of the bridge from the rock below requires a long string of very well-timed abilities, and I have no shame in admitting that I just couldn't do it. There's also a pool of water inside the cave that leads to some red orb chests, and this pool allows speedrunners to skip the bridge even faster in a magicless run. If you hold R1 while underwater, Kratos thrusts himself forward. If we submerge into the water just a tiny bit, Kratos can face upwards towards the surface by holding X. Holding R1 from here will thrust Kratos out of the water and higher than he was ever supposed to go. So high in fact that we go right through the ceiling and the camera can't follow us. During the thrust we spam the X button to double jump, and then we perform an Apollo's offensive to land on a small bit of cliff that we can't see high up. From there, we need to navigate blind across a couple of swinging ropes to hit a load trigger. Can I just say I have a newfound respect for God of War speedrunners? This is insane. The next area is another puzzle. It's a pretty cool one too. It involves moving statues, platforming on a timer, and even using a crane to drop a big stone to break open the floor. It would be a shame if we were to just skip it all. All we need to do is drag the statue in front of the door, but leave just enough room between the statue and the door so we can wedge ourselves in between. Now, if we perform an uppercut, we get a bit more height than usual. Follow this up with an Apollo's offensive, a double jump, and another Apollo's offensive, and we can go right right over the door. The following area traps us inside the worst room in the entire game. The floor is completely made out of conveyor belts that drag us into giant rollers. The walls are equipped with instant kill flamethrowers, and it's also full of both archers and flying enemies. The game only lets us out if we can defeat all the enemies first, and there's a lot of them. This was easily the most frustrating part of the entire game so far, and I hate it. Thank the gods there's a skip for this. It's actually as simple as just going straight over the barrier, but it's a lot easier said than done. We need to double jump from the highest part of the floor and perform an Apollo's offensive in the air. You would think we need to perform the Apollo's offensive at the apex of the double jump, but actually we want to perform it directly after the second jump to take advantage of the upward momentum. The annoying part is the flamethrowers directly beneath us can still insta-kill you no matter how high up you are, but with enough patience we can get over the wall. The next level is the Path of Hades, but there's not really much to mention in terms of magicless. There aren't even really that many skips here either. We just had to endure the death traps and the enemies the old-fashioned way. The only part where magic is intended to be used is when we're jumping over these moving platforms while the archers barrage us with arrows. Projectile magic would have made this a lot easier, but it's still possible to make it over regardless. I still hate the climbing sections, but at least if we fall off we don't die. Unless the game forces us through the wall or something, but I'm sure that won't happen. After that, it's a straight shot to the final boss. There's a whole bunch of enemies in our way, but by now, our Blades of Chaos are at the maximum level, so they're not so tough. It's the fight against Ares himself that provides the challenge. I used this fight to see just how much damage our max level Blades of Chaos dealt, since Ares has a health bar. We found that a quick square triangle combo always dealt good damage, so we hit that whenever we could. Otherwise, it's just knowing when to block. But the next phase is the new most frustrating part of the game. We need to protect our family, but doing this without magic proves to be very difficult. Being so very outnumbered at all times, along with trying to keep the family alive and ourselves alive at the same time, then the only thing that could have made this part even more annoying is if we could fall off the edge for an instant loss. Oh wait. We noticed that a grapple would insta-kill one of the evil Kratoses, but the animation is a bit long and that leaves the rest of them to damage our family. So we used more sweeping attacks and Rage of the Gods to handle the crowd control, but when we got their numbers down, we switched to grapple attacks to make sure they die. It took a fair few attempts, but we finally made it to the final phase against Ares. The game replaces our weapon with a huge sword for the final showdown. There is a quick kill method that the speedrunners use, and with it you can defeat Ares in just a couple of well-placed sword thrusts with R1. This is me trying to replicate that quick kill and completely failing. Despite that, spamming the R1 attack definitely seems to get the job done fairly quick, and Ares soon falls. We are taken to Mount Olympus to take our place on the throne. We open our inventory one last time to show that we still have not unlocked a single magic. We also still don't have a mana bar. Before we end the run, my live chat asked me to break the two statues either side of the throne. They take quite a beating, but after we break both of them, a bunch of numbers appeared on screen. I have no idea what they mean, but apparently this was the second secret message. I don't even know where the first one was. Anyway, can you beat God of War without even acquiring magic? Yes, we can. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed challenge runs like this, then please subscribe. A big thank you to the God of War speedrun community, especially Trash, who taught me everything I know about this game. Speaking of people I need to thank, here's our top supporters. If you want to watch my videos early and get your name on this list, then please consider becoming a member, a Twitch sub, or a patron. A big thank you to all those who already have. I can't do this without you. If I do more God of War challenge runs, I'll link the playlist on screen. But in the meantime, how about beating Metal Gear Solid without taking steps? Or beating Oddworld without possessing enemies? I'll link those on screen now as well. This game is hard, right? It's not just me. Does this mean I have to play God of War 2 now? Oh.